Sometimes cartoons can get so popular, networks decide to give it a spin-off show. However, these spin-offs are not always good. In fact, most of the time they end up being much worse than the originals and upset fans from the original series. I'm your host as always, K-Max Time, and today I want to go over my picks for the top 10 worst cartoon spin-off shows of all time. Now, before we get into today's list, I just want to remind everyone that these are just my own personal opinions, and if you like one of these shows on the list, it's not a big deal, you just have shitty taste in TV shows. Also, I just wanted to give a heads up that some of these shows are not technically spin-offs, but are instead reboots, but they are so bad compared to the originals, I just had to include them. But with that out of the way, guys, let's jump right in with our first show on the list, Teen Titans Go. Like I said, this isn't a spin-off, but it's so bad it had to make the list. Now, I can already see the comments, but K-Mac, Teen Titans Go is actually good. No, it's not. Is it as bad as everyone claims? Maybe not. But when you compare it to the original Teen Titans animated series, it just leaves you with an awful taste in your mouth. Not to mention that Cartoon Network has done nothing but shove this show down our throats over the past few years. It's like literally 70% of what they play anymore, and it's absolutely beyond crazy. Then they went on and destroyed some of my favorite characters and made them into babbling morons, and it just really saddens me the way they've taken this show in the direction. Like I said, they really ruined a lot of the character dynamics with Robin and others in the show. I just really don't like the way they went with this, and that's why it's on my list.
As we say on Tamaran, gronk, gronk, whoops, and pebnik.
Harmonious, but not profound enough!
Next on my list is Rugrats All Grown Up. And I can remember this show when it first came out and how pumped I was for it because I freaking loved the original Rugrats series so much. But man, I was quickly let down. Gone was all the sense of adventure and exploration that I loved from the original, instead replaced with the cliche preteen problems like fitting in at school or your first girl crush. It was such an odd departure from what the show started out as, and it turned me off immediately. While doing a grown-up version of the show, that was kind of a neat idea to see what the babies would be like when they were a little bit older, it was very poorly executed and left most of the fans, myself included, wanting a series to return to diapers for Tommy and friends.
Say you're another year older, another year wiser, but I still go to school to get an
One of the weirdest cartoons I've ever seen is the often forgotten cartoon spin-off of the movie Dumb and Dumber. This was such an oddball show to even exist. I mean, I'm sure everyone loved the original Dumb and Dumber movie like I did, but did it really need a cartoon animated series? I don't know. As you can imagine, the show was poorly done, having sloppy writing, over-the-top stupid plot lines, and no real direction. It was a complete mess of a show, and it's no wonder that not many people even remember this existed. The show ran for one season that aired on 1995's ABC, and that was even too much for this crappy show, so let's just pretend it didn't ever happen and go back to not remembering it. My next pick isn't a cartoon series, but instead a full animated feature film, and that is of course Disney's movie Planes. Notice I didn't say Pixar movie, and that's because despite being a spin-off of the Disney Pixar film Cars, Planes is instead produced by Disney Toon Studios, who typically only make direct-to-DVD films. However, it was decided late into production that Planes was actually going to get a full theatrical release, and man, can you tell that Pixar was not involved in this movie. It is nowhere near as good as Cars, and it's just full of cheesy, crappy humor, along with a really cookie-cutter plotline. I mean, a low-down crop duster plane who dreams of being a big-shot racer one day, and with the help of his blue-collar friends, they eventually win the big race. I mean, yep, we've seen that one before, haven't we? Except this time it was way, way worse. But despite how poorly the movie is and how it was received by critics, it did well enough in the box office to get a full feature-length sequel called Planes, Fire and Rescue that came out just 2 years later, which is somehow even worse. I'd recommend staying far, far away from both of these films at all costs. Next up is a lesser-known show that was a spin-off of Arthur, of all things. It's called Postcards from Buster, and it follows Arthur's best friend Buster on his adventures around the world. And man, is this a shitty show. I mean, wow. The show is meant to be an informative children about the diversity and give them a glimpse into multicultural families, which, as you can imagine, is a hell of a boring and dry show for a cartoon. It's also a weird mixture of real life video and animation, so it's just insanely cringy the whole time. As if Arthur wasn't boring enough, imagine that show 1,000 times more boring, and then some even. Granted, it's a PBS show and they're supposed to be more of an educational than entertaining, but still, I mean, come on. I'd rather watch an Arthur marathon before I watch one episode of this trash.
Where you up to? What you up to, Buster?
One of the weirdest spin-off cartoons in recent memory is Camp WWE, which is exactly what it sounds like. Cartoon kid versions of all the WWE wrestlers at a summer camp together. And whoever thought of this must have been on something because it's such a crazy out there idea. It only had one season of 5 episodes and only ran on the WWE network, so not many people even know it exists. However, if you're into wrestling, then I've heard the show is actually quite clever and entertaining, but for the other 95% of the world that just doesn't know anything about wrestling, the show just falls flat when you don't understand the inside jokes or what characters are interacting with each other and why. I didn't really get it. I'm not a big into wrestling. So overall, the show isn't terrible if you're a wrestling fan, but for everyone else, the show is freaking awful.
Cena, get over here right now!
Sorry, Mr. McMahon. Ordinarily, I'd put you first, but nothing comes before my family, homie.
Over the years, there have been tons of Looney Tunes spin-offs and reboots. Some have been good, some have been bad. A prime example of a bad one, however, is Lunatics on Leash. This is a Looney Tune-based superhero show set in a post-apocalyptic Earth. Again, a super strange choice for a Looney Tunes series. Anyway, the show has a slightly darker feel to it than most Looney Tunes shows, and it never really gained much of an audience. It ran for just 2 seasons back in 2004 and 2005 on the WB before being canceled, which again is odd because a similar but much better Looney Tunes show was running at the same time on Cartoon Network, that being Duck Dodgers, which I actually loved. However, there are some decent episodes of this and a handful of funny moments throughout the show, but it just wasn't enough to keep me interested. I'd much prefer a superhero show like Young Justice and a Looney Tunes show like Tiny Toons Adventure, and I don't really want this strange mixture of the two genres here, and it's just kind of a forgettable show. Possibly the single worst reboot I've ever witnessed has to be the 2016 Powerpuff Girls show. I mean, my God, did they destroy what was one of my favorite shows from my childhood. First off, they didn't even bother to bring back the original voice actors for the girls, which is just a major bummer, as they were some of my favorites of all time. But then they went on and just went totally shit show on everything that made the original series so great. The lame-ass memes they brought into the show was like such cringy to watch. I mean, for real, the twerking Powerpuff Girls, I mean, come on, Cartoon Network, you're better than that. At least I hope so. And now they're getting super desperate to keep viewers interested. They brought a 4th Powerpuff Girl into the show for like basically no reason. Just everything about the reboot is a big no from me. It's just been awful the whole way around. I stopped watching it. I just can't get back into it. And if it's I get that it's geared for a younger audience who may have never seen the original, but for me as an old school fan of the series, it's just a slap in the face. When I first heard there was a Family Guy spin-off show in the works, I was beyond excited. I absolutely love Family Guy. I envisioned like a Quagmire or a Stewie-based show, and it could have been insanely funny. But no, we were stuck with the Cleveland show. And I'm a huge fan of Seth MacFarlane and his shows, but this one just never clicked with me. It just seemed like a less funny version of Family Guy with very similar characters. They're just not as good. It was like a knockoff, lesser brand. It was like a really crappy show to me. When MacFarlane did American Dad, it was kind of a spin-off show of Family Guy as well, but it worked with me. I mean, it also had a family and had talking animals. It had an overall similar feel, but it brought something new to the table, and it felt like it could stand on its own without Family Guy ever being around. But to me, the Cleveland show just can't do the same. It failed to connect with its audience and was canceled after just 4 seasons. And most of the main characters actually found their way into Family Guy, which is pretty strange, but I guess it's better than nothing.
My name is Cleveland Brown, and I am proud to be right back in my hometown.
But finally, what is easily my most hated spin-off cartoon of all time has to be Planet Sheen, which is a spin-off of Nickelodeon's show Jimmy Neutron. Seriously, the amount of cringe in the show will make your eyes water. The show's premise is that Sheen accidentally shot himself into outer space and crash lands on an alien planet which is ruled by Emperor Dorcas. Just saying that makes me want to throw up. I mean, who in their right mind thought this would be a good idea? Sheen was hardly even a good side character. Why did they have to give him his own show and then fill it with annoying characters and awful plot lines? I'm just glad this show only ran for one season before it was pulled off the air for good, and hopefully Nickelodeon learned its lesson about making shitty spin-off shows of stupid side characters. But anyway, that's all I have for today, guys. I hope you guys all enjoyed. If you guys did, do me a huge favor and smash that like button. Also, let me know if I missed any crappy spin-off shows that you guys hate. Also, like I said, be sure to subscribe for more videos in your sub boxes daily. I'll be making the opposite of this list next week with my favorite spin-off shows. So leave ideas for that as well down in the comment section. But until next time, guys, remember that it's always came back time somewhere. Till then, take it easy and peace out.